Hello. I'm a 38-year-old woman living in the suburbs outside Cincinnati, Ohio. I've never really told anyone the full story of what happened to me. It was too embarrassing, too unbelievable, and honestly, too painful. But I think it's time I share it now, because there might be others out there going through something similar, and also because if I don't get this off my chest, I think I might go crazy. My story begins last fall, around mid-September. It was just a regular workday, nothing special. I work as a marketing coordinator for a regional manufacturing company, and that particular day, I was having lunch with some co-workers at the diner down the street. We'd just finished our sandwiches and were heading back to the office when my cell phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Hello? Good afternoon, Miss Mitchell. This is Jennifer calling from the Consumer Lending Department at First National Bank. I'm reaching out regarding a personal loan in your name that requires immediate attention." My heart just stopped. A personal loan? What personal loan? My husband David and we're very careful with money. We've got our mortgage, of course, but other than that, we don't carry any debt. David's always been really adamant about that. When we got married 12 years ago, he made me promise we'd never live beyond our means. No credit card debt. No car loans if we could help it. Nothing. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been some mistake. I haven't taken out any personal loans." "Miss Mitchell, according to our records, you took out a $50,000 personal loan from our Riverside branch 2 years ago. The account is currently 90 days past due, and if we don't receive payment soon, we'll have no choice but to report this to the credit bureaus and potentially pursue legal action." $50,000? 2 years ago? I was swamped with work 2 years ago. Barely had time to breathe, let alone apply for a loan I didn't need. My hands started shaking. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, there has to be some kind of error. I never applied for any loan. This has to be identity theft or something." "Miss Mitchell, that's highly unlikely. The application was submitted in person at our branch, with proper identification and notarized documents. Are you certain you don't recall this?" I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I supposed to doubt my own memory? "I need to come to that branch right now. I want to see the application, the documents, everything." I didn't even finish my lunch hour. I told my manager I had a family emergency and left immediately. The whole taxi ride to the bank, my heart was pounding. What was going on? Was someone really using my name? Who would do that? When I got to the Riverside branch, I demanded to see the loan officer. They pulled up my file, and sure enough, there was my name on all the paperwork. There was a copy of my driver's license, notarized, signature forms, everything. But when I looked at the signature, I knew immediately it wasn't mine. "This isn't my signature. Look, I'll sign something right now, and you can compare them." The loan officer looked uncomfortable. "Well, Miss Mitchell, I understand your concern, but at the time the loan was processed, all our verification procedures were followed. Would you like to review the security footage from that day?" They pulled up the video surveillance from 2 years ago. The moment I saw the person on that screen, I thought I was going to collapse right there. It was my mother. My own mother, sitting at that desk, signing documents, handing over identification that must have been mine, taking out a $50,000 loan in my name. This can't be. Tears just started streaming down my face. Why would my mother do this? Why would she steal my identity and take out a loan without even telling me? I left the bank in a daze and immediately called her. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Mum, it's me." "Oh, honey, what's wrong? You sound upset." "Mum, did you take out a $50,000 loan in my name 2 years ago?" There was a pause. Then she said, in this completely casual tone, "Oh, that. Yes, I needed some money for a business investment. I meant to tell you, it just slipped my mind." Slipped her mind? A $50,000 loan slipped her mind? "Mum, the bank just called me. This loan is 3 months past due. Do you understand what this is doing to my credit? Why would you do this without asking me? Sarah, honey, don't be dramatic. I needed the money and I couldn't qualify for a loan in my own name because of some old credit issues. I'm your mother. I raised you. I figured you wouldn't mind helping me out. I'll pay it back soon, don't worry. Pay it back soon? It's already 3 months overdue. Mum, this is serious. This is identity theft. You can't just use my name and social security number without my permission. Identity theft? Sarah Mitchell, how dare you accuse your own mother of being a criminal? I changed your diapers. I put you through college. And this is how you talk to me? I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. Yes, my mother raised me. Yes, she sacrificed for me. But that didn't give her the right to steal my identity, did it? That evening, I told David everything. At first, he couldn't believe it. He just stared at the bank documents I'd brought home, his face getting paler and paler. Sarah, your mother really did this? I saw her on the security footage. It was definitely her. David let out a long sigh. We need to meet with her face to face and get some answers. If this affects your credit, it could impact our mortgage, our ability to refinance, everything. He was right. We couldn't just ignore this. The next day, I drove to my mother's house. She lives alone, or at least I thought she did. My father passed away when I was a freshman in high school, and since then, my mother raised me by herself. She worked cleaning jobs, waited tables, did whatever it took to put me through college. I'd always felt grateful and a little guilty about how hard she'd worked for me. That's why this whole situation was so confusing. Why would she do this to me now? When I pulled up to her house, I noticed a car in the driveway I didn't recognize. A pretty expensive-looking SUV, actually. Since when did my mother drive something like that? I rang the doorbell, but she didn't answer. I used my key and let myself in. As soon as I opened the door, I heard a man's voice coming from the living room. Linda, honey, we're cutting it pretty close this month. We've got the credit card bills due and... Honey? There was a man in my mother's house calling her honey. I walked into the living room. There was a man, maybe mid-50s, sitting on the couch. My mother was in the kitchen cutting up some fruit. Mum? She nearly dropped the knife. Sarah! What are you doing here? You didn't call first. Mum, who is this? My mother's face turned red, and she glanced at the man. He stood up and extended his hand to me. Hello, I'm Robert Jensen. I've been living here with your mother since last year. Living here? Since when? Mum, are you remarried or something? Not exactly remarried. We're companions. I got lonely, Sarah. I have a right to companionship at my age. I felt my head spinning. Look, I didn't care if my mother had a boyfriend or wanted to live with someone. That was her business. But why hadn't she told me? And was this man somehow connected to the loan situation? Mom, I need to talk to you privately. Just the two of us. Robert seemed to get the hint. He grabbed his jacket. I'll give you two some privacy. I'll just run to the hardware store. After he left, I sat my mother down and asked her directly, Mom, that $50,000 loan you took out in my name, what exactly did you use it for? She sighed heavily. Well, Robert needed some capital for a business venture, and we used some of it for living expenses. Robert's business venture? Mum, are you telling me you took out a loan in my name to fund your boyfriend's business? Sarah, don't call him my boyfriend. That sounds so juvenile. He's my partner. And yes, when his business takes off, we'll be able to pay you back easily. Mum, the loan is already 90 days overdue. His business doesn't seem to be taking off. My mother's voice took on an edge. Why are you being so selfish about this? After everything I did for you, sacrificing my whole life to raise you, and you can't help me out with one little loan. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. One little loan? $50,000 that's destroying my credit rating? Mum, I need a full accounting of all the loans you've taken out in my name. Right now. She hesitated, and I knew immediately there was more. How many loans are there, Mum? Well, if you add them all up, maybe around $120,000. $120,000. I felt my legs go weak. I actually had to grab the kitchen counter to keep from falling. $120,000 in fraudulent loans, all in my name? Mum, are you out of your mind? How could you do this? Robert chose that moment to return. But he wasn't alone. There was a young woman with him, maybe late 20s, carrying shopping bags from expensive stores. Linda, we're back! Ashley wanted to grab a few things from the mall. Ashley? Who was Ashley? The young woman looked at me and smiled in this way that made my skin crawl. Oh, you must be Sarah. I'm Ashley Jensen, Robert's daughter. I guess that makes me kind of like your stepsister. Stepsister? What? My mother jumped in quickly, looking flustered. Ashley's been staying with us for a few months. She needed a place to land while she looks for work. I looked at this young woman, with her designer purse and shopping bags, supposedly looking for work while living rent-free in my mother's house. Something about the way she looked at me, this mixture of superiority and hostility, set off alarm bells. Mum, we're not done talking about those loans, Ashley interrupted. Sarah, maybe you should be a little more understanding. Your mum has done so much for you. The least you could do is help her out when she needs it. I turned to face this stranger. Excuse me, but this is between me and my mother. You don't know anything about our situation. I know your mum raised you all by herself, and you're too selfish to help her when she asks. Who did this woman think she was? I left that day more confused and angry than ever. When I got home and told David everything, he looked genuinely worried. Sarah, this is getting out of hand. We need to talk to a lawyer. Your mother's taken out over $100,000 in your name. That's serious identity theft. He was right. The next day, I made an appointment with a family law attorney. When I explained the situation, the lawyer's expression grew grave. Miss Mitchell, what your mother has done is criminal identity theft. It doesn't matter that she's your mother. She had no legal right to use your personal information to obtain loans. You have grounds for both civil and criminal action. But she's my mother. Can I really sue my own mother? I understand this is difficult, but you need to protect yourself. If these loans remain unpaid, they'll destroy your credit for years. You could lose your ability to refinance your home, get car loans, even affect your employment in some fields. I felt sick, but I knew he was right. I had the lawyer send my mother a demand letter requiring her to repay the full $120,000 within 90 days, or I would pursue legal action. 3 weeks later, I got her response in the mail. It was handwritten, and when I read it, I started crying. I am your mother, a mother who gave up everything to raise you. If you think you can threaten me with lawyers, go ahead and try. Let's see how far you get suing the woman who brought you into this world. That letter broke something in me. The mother I knew, the one who worked multiple jobs to send me to college, would never have written something like that. What had happened to her? I filed a police report for identity theft. I filed civil charges. I did everything the lawyer advised. The police investigation began, and they called me in for an interview about 2 months later. The detective had some shocking news. Miss Mitchell, we've been going through your mother's financial records. Did you know that there's a property deed in your name for a condominium in Indianapolis? What? A condo? I don't own any property besides my house. According to the Marion County property records, you purchased a 2-bedroom condo in Indianapolis 2 years ago for $250,000. My head was spinning. That's impossible. I never bought any condo. The detective pulled out the paperwork. There was my name, my forged signature, everything. And according to the records, Robert Jensen and Ashley Jensen were currently living in that condo. My mother bought them a condo, using my name and credit? It appears so. And based on the mortgage documents, the down payment and monthly payments have been made, using funds from the loans taken out in your name. I felt like I was going to be sick. My mother hadn't just taken out loans for business or living expenses. She'd bought her boyfriend and his daughter a condo and stuck me with the bill. The detective continued. There's something else. Given the unusual nature of this case, a mother systematically defrauding her own daughter to this extent, our forensic accountant suggested something. Have you ever had a DNA test done with your mother? A DNA test? Why would I need that? Miss Mitchell, in our experience, this level of financial exploitation within a family often indicates something more unusual going on. We've seen cases where the perpetrator isn't actually related to the victim. I know it sounds far-fetched, but would you be willing to do a test? I thought it was crazy. Of course my mother was my mother. I'd lived with her my whole life. But the lawyer thought it was worth checking, given the circumstances. I managed to get a sample of my mother's DNA, a few hairs from her hairbrush, when I visited the house one last time to pick up some old photographs. 2 weeks later, the results came back. Miss Mitchell, I'm very sorry to tell you this. According to the DNA analysis, there is zero probability that Linda Hartman is your biological mother. I don't remember much of what happened next. I think I must have gone into shock. The detective had to repeat it 3 times before it really sank in. Linda Hartman was not my biological mother. Then who was? Who was I? The police launched a deeper investigation. They pulled old records, interviewed relatives I barely knew, tracked down documentation from decades ago, and slowly, the truth emerged. My real mother, Catherine Ann Mitchell, had died in a car accident when I was 5 years old. After her death, my father had been overwhelmed, trying to work and care for a small child. About a year later, he met Linda Hartman. They married quickly, and Linda moved in, taking over the role of mother. But here's what I never knew. When my father died during my freshman year of high school, he left everything to me, his daughter. There was a life insurance policy worth $200,000. There was the house, fully paid off, worth another $250,000. There was a small investment account, another $50,000, $500,000, all designated for me, Catherine's daughter. Linda had been listed as the custodian of these assets until I turned 18. But when I turned 18, instead of transferring everything to me as legally required, Linda forged documents and gradually drained everything. She sold the house, cashed out the investments, claimed the life insurance payout, all of it. And I never knew, because she convinced me we were barely getting by. She made me believe she was working multiple low-wage jobs to keep us afloat, when in reality, she was living off my inheritance. When that money started running out, she moved to the next phase, taking out loans and buying property in my name. The detective showed me records proving that Robert Jensen and Ashley Jensen had been in on it from the beginning. Robert wasn't some innocent boyfriend. He was Linda's partner in this fraud. And Ashley? She was Linda's daughter from a previous relationship, not Robert's daughter at all. They'd all conspired together. The total amount they'd stolen from me, between my inheritance and the fraudulent loans, over $500,000. I sat in that police station and cried for 2 hours straight. Everything I'd believed about my life was a lie. The case went to trial 8 months later. I had to sit in that courtroom and listen to Linda testify. She tried to claim she'd done nothing wrong, that she'd raised me and deserved compensation for her years of sacrifice. The prosecutor was relentless. Miss Hartman, you were entrusted with Catherine Mitchell's daughter's inheritance as a custodian. You were legally required to transfer those assets to Sarah when she turned 18. Instead, you stole them. Is that correct? I didn't steal anything. I raised that girl. I fed her, clothed her, put a roof over her head, using money that legally belonged to her, correct? Money from her deceased mother's estate? Linda couldn't answer that. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged documents, The DNA test results, witness testimony from people who remembered my real mother. The jury convicted all three of them. Linda Hartman, 7 years in prison for identity theft, fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. 4 years for conspiracy and fraud. 2.5 years for conspiracy and fraud. The judge also ordered them to pay $500,000 in restitution, jointly and severally. After the trial, I started trying to find my real family, my real mother's family. It turned out I had an aunt, my mother's sister, living in Florida. Her name was Susan, and when I called her for the first time, she started crying. "Sarah, is this really you? Oh my God, I've been trying to find you for years." Aunt Susan told me everything. She told me about my real mother, Catherine, who was kind and funny and loved me more than anything in the world. She told me about the car accident that took her life, how devastated the family had been. She told me that after the funeral, my father had cut off contact with Catherine's family. He'd remarried Linda quickly, and when Susan tried to visit, Linda always made excuses. Eventually, Susan lost track of us. "I tried to find you when you would have turned 18, Susan said, crying. "I wanted to tell you about your mother, about our family, but I couldn't locate you. Linda must have moved and changed your contact information." Susan showed me photographs of my real mother, and when I saw them, I understood why the DNA test hadn't surprised me as much as it should have. I looked exactly like her. The same eyes, the same smile. How had I never questioned why I looked nothing like Linda? These days, I visit Aunt Susan regularly. I have cousins I never knew existed. I have a history, a heritage, a family that actually wants me for who I am, not for what they can steal from me. Linda wrote to me from prison about 6 months into her sentence. The letter said, "I'm sorry. I needed the money. Please help me. I'm having a hard time in here." I wrote back one sentence. "You are not my mother. Do not contact me again." Ashley tried to reach out too, through Facebook. "Sarah, please forgive Mum. She's suffering in prison. Can't you help her out?" I blocked her. I heard through the lawyer that after Robert got out early on good behavior, Ashley refused to see him. She blamed him for ruining her life, getting her sent to prison. Robert blamed Linda. Linda blamed both of them. The 3 conspirators who'd been so unified in stealing from me fell apart the moment they had to face consequences. There's a kind of justice in that, I suppose. My husband David has been my rock through all of this. When I found out I was pregnant in the middle of the trial, he held me while I cried, terrified that I'd somehow repeat the cycle, that I wouldn't know how to be a real mother because I'd never had one. But Aunt Susan told me something that helped. She said, "Sarah, you carry your real mother inside you. Her kindness, her strength, her love, it's all part of who you are. You'll be a wonderful mother because you are Catherine's daughter." I'm 7 months pregnant now. David and I have decided on names. If it's a boy, James. If it's a girl, Catherine, after my real mother. We're not rich. The restitution judgment is still working its way through the courts. We'll probably recover some of the money eventually, but not all of it. Linda, Robert, and Ashley don't have much left to take, but we'll be okay. We have our house. We have each other. We have a baby on the way, and I have my real family back. Last week, Aunt Susan came to visit. She brought more photos of my mother, some of her jewelry, even her old college yearbook. We sat together looking through everything, and Susan told me stories. "Your mother loved gardening," Susan said. "She had this little herb garden on the back porch. She always said that growing things made her feel connected to life. I'm starting my own herb garden now. In a few months, when the baby comes, we'll have basil and rosemary and thyme growing on our back porch, just like my real mother did. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd never gotten that phone call from the bank. If I'd just kept going through life, believing Linda was my mother, never knowing the truth. I probably would have let her keep stealing from me. I would have felt guilty every time she asked for money. I would have sacrificed my family's security for someone who was systematically destroying my life. But I did get that phone call. I did investigate. I did find the truth. And if there's anyone listening to this who suspects something similar might be happening to them, please, I'm begging you, investigate. Don't let guilt or family obligations stop you from protecting yourself. If someone is stealing from you, even if they're family, especially if they're family, you have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to the truth. I found a letter my real mother wrote to me before she died. Aunt Susan had kept it all these years. It was supposed to be given to me on my 18th birthday, but Linda made sure that never happened. The letter said, "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. And I'm so sorry for that. I wanted to see you grow up. I wanted to be there for your first day of school, your graduation, your wedding. But life doesn't always go the way we plan. I want you to know that you were loved beyond measure. Every moment I had with you was a gift. Be brave, my sweet girl. Be kind. Be true to yourself. And know that wherever I am, I'm watching over you, so proud of the woman you'll become. Love always, Mum." I read that letter to my belly every night now. I tell my unborn child about their grandmother Catherine, the real grandmother they'll never meet, but whose love lives on through me. And I make a promise, every single night. I will never lie to you. I will never use you. I will never make you doubt your own worth. You will know where you come from, who you are, and that you are loved for who you are, not for what you can provide. That's the difference between a real mother and someone who just plays the part. I'm Catherine Mitchell's daughter, and soon I'll be somebody's mother too. And this time, we'll get it right. Thank you for listening to my story.
So that's the story. And if you're sitting there feeling like you just watched someone's entire sense of reality get dismantled piece by piece, you're not wrong, because that's exactly what happened here. Sarah spent 38 years believing one version of her life, only to discover that nearly everything she thought she knew about her own family was a carefully constructed lie. This wasn't just financial fraud. This was identity theft on a psychological level that most of us can't even imagine. And here's the thing that really cuts deep. The person running this con wasn't some stranger who broke into her credit file. It was the woman she called Mom for over 3 decades. Let's talk about what was really happening here from a psychological standpoint, because this case is a textbook example of long-term manipulation wrapped in the language of family obligation. Linda didn't just wake up one day and decide to commit fraud. She spent years building a foundation of guilt and gratitude that she could later exploit. Think about how she framed everything. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. I worked multiple jobs for you. Every single one of those statements was designed to create a debt that Sarah could never fully repay. And that's the key to this kind of manipulation. You make someone feel like they owe you everything, and then when you start cashing in on that debt, they question themselves instead of questioning you. When Sarah first confronted her about that $50,000 loan, Linda's response wasn't denial or panic. It was indignation. How dare you accuse me? I'm your mother. That's classic Darvo, folks. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. She flipped the script immediately, turning Sarah's legitimate concern into an act of ingratitude and betrayal. And notice how she brought Robert and Ashley into the picture gradually. First, it was just Robert, the lonely companion. Then it was Ashley, the struggling daughter who needed help. By the time Sarah realized these people were living off her stolen identity, they had already formed a united front against her. That's called triangulation. You bring in allies who will back up your version of reality and make the victim feel like they're the unreasonable one. Linda was running a psychological operation designed to keep Sarah off balance, guilty, and compliant. And for a while, it worked. Because here's the brutal truth. The best way to steal from someone isn't to sneak around in the shadows, it's to convince them that letting you steal is the right thing to do. Now, let's follow the money, because that's where this whole operation becomes crystal clear. Linda didn't just take out loans. She executed a multi-year plan to systematically drain every asset that legally belonged to Sarah. Start with the inheritance, $500,000, life insurance, house proceeds, investment accounts, all designated for Sarah when her real father died. Linda was supposed to be the custodian, the temporary guardian of those assets, until Sarah turned 18. Instead, she was the fox guarding the hen house. She forged documents, sold property, cashed out accounts, and pocketed everything. Then she covered her tracks with a simple but effective lie. We're broke. I'm working 3 jobs just to keep us afloat. Sarah believed it because why wouldn't she? She had no reason to doubt the struggling single mother who was supposedly sacrificing everything for her. But when that inheritance money started running dry, Linda moved to phase 2, identity theft. She already had all of Sarah's personal information, social security number, birth certificate, the works. So she started taking out loans in Sarah's name. $50,000 here, $30,000 there, eventually totaling $120,000 in fraudulent debt. And then the real estate purchase. A $250,000 condo in Indianapolis bought entirely in Sarah's name, with Sarah's credit, using money from loans Sarah never authorized. And who moved into that condo? Robert and Ashley, the boyfriend and the fake stepdaughter, living rent-free in a property that Sarah was unknowingly paying for. Think about the audacity of that for a second. Linda stole Sarah's inheritance, destroyed Sarah's credit, bought property for her secret family, and then had the nerve to act offended when Sarah asked for accountability. That's not a mother-daughter relationship. That's a criminal enterprise using family ties as camouflage. And here's the power dynamic that made it all possible. Information asymmetry. Linda had all the cards. She knew Sarah's real history, controlled the narrative about their family, and had complete access to Sarah's identity documents. Sarah had none of that. She was operating on trust in a game where the other player had stacked the deck from day one. From a practical standpoint, let's talk about what Sarah did right once she started figuring this out, because there are real lessons here. First, she documented everything. When that bank called, she didn't just accept the explanation over the phone. She went to the branch, reviewed the paperwork, got copies, watched the security footage. That's evidence collection, and it's critical. Second, she involved professionals early. She got a lawyer. She filed a police report. She didn't try to handle this as a private family matter that could be resolved over coffee and conversation. Third, and this is important, she followed through even when it was emotionally devastating. Think about how hard it must have been to file criminal charges against the person she thought was her mother. But she did it anyway, because she understood that protecting herself wasn't optional. Now, could some of this have been caught earlier? In hindsight, yes. The first major red flag was Linda's vague explanation for needing that initial $50,000 loan. Business investment? What business? Sarah could have pressed harder there, demanded specifics, maybe even checked her own credit report just to make sure nothing else was lurking. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. We cannot blame Sarah for trusting her mother. That's what families are supposed to do. Trust is the foundation of those relationships. Linda weaponized that trust, and that's on her, not on Sarah. I'm going to say this clearly for anyone listening who might be in a similar situation. I am not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, and if you suspect identity theft or financial abuse, you need to talk to an actual attorney in your jurisdiction right away. But as a general principle, if someone has access to your personal documents and your financial accounts, you need to monitor your credit regularly. You need to check those bank statements. You need to verify that loans and properties in your name are actually things you authorized. And if you discover fraud, even if it's family, you need to report it. Because the damage to your financial future isn't something you can just forgive away. That debt follows you. That ruined credit affects your ability to buy a home, get a car, sometimes even get a job. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival. So what are the real takeaways here? Let's break this down. First lesson, family obligation is not a blank check. You can love someone, you can appreciate what they've done for you, and you can still have boundaries around your finances and your identity. Anyone who tells you that being family means they get unlimited access to your resources without accountability is lying to you. Second lesson, trust but verify, especially when money is involved. If someone is asking to use your credit, your name, your assets, You have every right to see exactly what they're doing with it and to demand transparency. That's not paranoia. That's basic financial self-protection. Third lesson, document everything. If something feels wrong, start keeping records. Emails, text messages, bank statements, recorded conversations where legal. You might never need that evidence, but if you do need it, you'll be grateful you collected it early. Fourth lesson, if you discover fraud, act quickly. The longer fraudulent accounts sit on your credit, the harder they are to dispute and the more damage they do. File police reports, contact the banks, freeze your credit if necessary. Speed matters. And fifth lesson, betrayal says everything about the betrayer and nothing about your worth. Sarah didn't cause this by being naive or trusting. Linda caused this by choosing over and over again to lie and steal. Robert and Ashley caused this by joining in. Those were their choices, their moral failures, not hers. And here's the last thing I want you to understand. Sarah's story doesn't end with the trial. Yeah, she got justice in court. Linda got 7 years, Robert got 4, Ashley got 2.5. There's a restitution order for $500,000, though realistically she'll probably never see most of that money. But justice in a courtroom isn't the same as healing. Sarah still has to process the fact that the woman who raised her was running a con the entire time. She still has to rebuild her credit, her sense of security, her understanding of who she even is, and that's hard work. But she's doing it. She found her real family. She's building a life with people who actually care about her. She's about to become a mother herself, and she's doing it with clarity about what real love looks like versus what exploitation looks like. If you're listening to this and something in your own life feels off, if someone who claims to love you is also controlling your money or your identity or your sense of reality, pay attention to that feeling. You're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You might be seeing something real. And if you are, get help. Talk to someone you trust who's outside the situation. Consult a professional. Protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, the people who truly love you won't ask you to sacrifice your future for their comfort. They won't steal from you and call it family loyalty. They won't gaslight you into doubting your own eyes. Real love doesn't look like that. Real love doesn't cost you everything. Remember that.